We've all sat in executive meetings with slides that are full of data, throughput numbers, overtime hours, project completion rates, and watched a room full of smart people nod along with what everyone's saying, thinking, is this good? What am I supposed to do with any of this? And I've worked with founders who are building something real and doing it fast, but haven't had a single conversation yet about what they should be measuring. Not because they don't care, because they don't even know where to start. Two very different situations, same fundamental problem. The numbers aren't driving the decisions. And that's what we're fixing today. Hi, I'm Sarah, a fractional COO and operational turnaround partner for founder led SMB. I help scaling companies unlock growth with the teams and tools they already have. I help install structure and repeatable processes that turn ambition into execution. And with me today is
Hi, I'm Penny Cook, also a fractional COO and a strategic operations consultant, helping product and consumer brands install, upgrade, and run scalable operations and operational systems that reflect the founder's unique vision and ambition. Sarah, let's get into it.
do it.
Today, we're going to give you 3 things, whether you're swimming in dashboards or just getting started, that will help you answer one question. Are your metrics actually making you better? Our first tip that we want to talk about is know what to track and how it's defined. So start with the most fundamental question. What should you actually be tracking? Here's a filter that I use. Every metric you track should answer one of 2 questions. Is something about to go wrong, or is what we changed actually working? If a metric doesn't answer one of those 2 questions, it might not belong on your dashboard. Think about your metrics in 3 different layers. The first layer is your strategy, your strategic metrics. They answer the question, are we moving toward the right goal? Revenue growth, customer retention, margin trend. These get reviewed monthly because they move slowly and they tell you where you're headed. The second layer, operational metrics. They answer the question, is the machine running well? On-time deliveries, cycle time, fulfillment accuracy, error rates, things like that. These get reviewed weekly because they reflect what your team is doing right now. And probably your operational people and operational managers are living and breathing inside those metrics. Third layer, leading indicators. And this, I think, Sarah, is where the secret sauce is. They answer the question, what is about to happen? Pipeline coverage, open order backlog, overtime rate, vendor lead times. These are the ones most organizations skip, and they're the most valuable because they tell you something before it becomes a problem.
Penny, you're absolutely right. I think it's really important to highlight this specific thing around leading indicators and lagging indicators. A lagging indicator really is our rear view mirror. And while those are so important, I can think of a great example just off the top of my head. Let's say a founder's looking at revenue. Revenue is what did we get in the past? And they're watching that
Lagging. Yep.
religiously, right? And you might find yourself focused so on that number that another figure that is more leading, for example, is a fulfillment percentage. And if we aren't watching that fulfillment percentage, we have a potentially a really big problem on our hands that when it comes to pass, it's almost too late to do something effective about it.
Yep, it's so true. You can watch your lagging indicators change, and without understanding what's driving that change or whether that change is critical, you may not see something that you're about to crash into. The second part of what's really critical about that is agreeing on what's being measured and how. And take customer response time as an example. It sounds simple. You have SLAs, service level agreements with your customers about how long it's going to take to get back to them, to address problems, to escalate, things like that. And these are usually for service companies, at least, these are contractual. It's a great operational metric. When does the clock start when you're measuring yourself? How do you do that internally? Is your operational team measuring it separately from your customer team, measuring it separately from your sales team? Get everyone on the same page so you can, when you're talking about a metric, everybody is talking about a metric formed the same way with the same definition so you can move forward with clarity.
Absolutely. And to build onto that, Penny, I'd like to think about what good looks like. And to take it a step further from what good looks like brings us to our second tip. And it gets even a little bit more specific than what good looks like. And that's what I really like about it. And that is setting thresholds for your metrics. So going beyond the good versus bad, but what's the upper level and what's the lower level of every single one of your metrics, frankly? So what does success look like and what does failure look like? And really being really realistic um, about what those levels are. I want to give you an example for those listening. Think of it as a highway with two guardrails, one on each side. There's a low guardrail, and then that's really the performance floor. And then the top guardrail is, of course, where we want to get to in our business. And that was really that high number is really driving a standard of excellence within our business. Let's talk through real life what this might look like in your business. Your healthy range or your threshold, for example, could be between 15 minutes and 4 hours. And a number like that might be measuring, say, response time for your customers, your clients. And so that window, that threshold actually tells the team what the acceptable territory is in terms of the how they run the business, the things they think about to ensure, of course, the activities within the department are supporting that threshold. And we want to really remember that faster and higher and better is not always better. So just to think about what does that higher threshold look like? We don't necessarily want that exceeded either, because that could be a great example of not focusing on the right things. So you want to be very mindful about how that threshold is set.
Yep, it's totally true. When I think about 15 minutes to 4 hours being the acceptable range that we've set up, we've selected for our company for customer response times, and we're consistently seeing things. Let's say we're consistently seeing things faster than 15 minutes. And on the surface, you could say, great, we're solving things really quickly, but it is outside our acceptable threshold. Why did we set that? Because potentially it means we are not doing the research that's needed. We're leaving hard cases aside and we're only solving easy cases. Like there are some indicators here that we really need to look at if it is systematically outside those thresholds. Same as if we're making customers wait more than 4 hours and we have said this is our acceptable range. We really need to look at what are the causes and what are the responses, which leads us into tip number 3: use context to understand your metrics. You can't make an assumption if you're presenting information to your leadership team to say, hey, we're solving all of our customer response rates in 10 minutes. You can't just say, hey, we're doing a great job, done, or oh, it's taking 6 hours. There are a lot of assumptions that we're making here. We need to paint some context around that. It could be that if it's taking too long, it could be that there's an anomaly in the system. We just did a launch, we didn't have all of the documentation together, and it's going to normalize back into 4 hours. No action is appropriate. Or it could be that we're understaffed and we need to get our hiring team, our recruiting team on that right away and get two more team members in here, and we need to look at budget around that. So again, those are two really different responses to what is the same metric that we don't know what the right response would be unless we paint that context around it.
That is so like how you've really gone deep on some good examples to think about, Petty. And I think, it's very important to really, when those guardrails are crossed, that we ask those really good questions. Asking maybe even more questions than you think you need to ask is really going to help
Yep.
you get to that root cause.
Yep, absolutely. I think that, and I think the questions are critical, right? What changed? When did it change? What else was happening in the business when that changed? And are we getting the info from the people who it most impacted? Because at the leadership level, again, if you're seeing numbers outside your thresholds, you could be making assumptions, but it could be kind of on the floor. You could say, you know what? They could say, we've been using a tool that it's been lagging. It could be a server issue, and all of a sudden you're hiring more headcount, right? Make sure that when you look at those metrics and you're looking to use those to solve problems, you're solving the problems that actually exist and you're not making up problems around those metrics.
Absolutely. So, in summary, here's what we would love you to walk away with today. So, whether or not you're just starting to build your practice around metrics, or you've been staring at the same dashboard for years and years,
Some of us have.
exactly. And that's okay. We want everybody to really ask yourself the same question. Are your metrics making you better? So, to summarize, know what to track. Choose metrics that predict your problems. And while our rearview mirror is an important metric in our business, really want to encourage our listeners to focus forward and really do a great job of separating your leading indicators from your lagging ones so that the activities we put in place, the conversations we're having, the meetings that we're having is really ends up focusing on proactive action-based activities that focus on a positive future versus the past that we simply can't change. The second thing we want you to remember is to set your guardrails. We're really talking about what's that lower threshold and then that higher one, and to really go beyond what good looks like into what the right range is. And then the last one, of course, is also important is around context. So when a guardrail is crossed, investigate before you react. And the same number can mean two very different things. So just remember the context within that framework of looking at those metrics.
Yeah. And getting that right is the difference, Sarah, between a good decision and a potentially very expensive decision. Right.
Exactly right, Penny. The between a good one and an expensive one, that is a wonderful metric to remember as we go. Now, these are parts of systems that Penny and I love to set up for clients. So send us a note if you have questions or want an opinion or even need some help because great businesses don't just happen. They operate on purpose.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
See you next time.
See you next time.